Alright, so what does it call out? What are we doing? Okay, let's go.
Are you recording?
Yeah, bro.
Coming of age in Atlanta. Each of the kindergarten students was eager to answer the teacher's question, but as usual, the hand of the slender boy in the middle row was first in the air. He was even quicker to respond than his older sister, Christine, who sat in the front row. Well, ML, tell us what you like to be when you grow up, the teacher said. I want to be a preacher like my father and my grandfather, so I can use big words like they do, the boy replied. Illustration.
Okay. Interesting.
You do like to use big words, don't you, Martin? The teacher said. Yes, ma'am. I learned how to spell another one. The other day, my grandmother rambunctious. I'll spell it for you. Rambunctious. She always calls me that. And what does it mean? The teacher asks. My grandmother says it's a word to describe somebody who can't keep still and is always busy getting into something. Just as Martin Luther King Jr. finished his reply, the school bell rang. Okay, children, the teacher said, gather your books and I'll see you all tomorrow. Try not to be too rambunctious. The children laughed, and several of them crowded around Martin, slumping his back. Martin gathered up his crayons and coloring books, tucked them neatly into his school bag, and marched out the room, down the hall with his sister. One by one, their friends said goodbye and went off into different directions. Martin liked the praise they had given him, but they were keeping him from hurrying home. His mother had promised to take him shopping for a new pair of pants and shirt. On Sunday, he was going to be baptized at his father's church. Martin had asked to be baptized because Christine recently had been, and whatever Christine did, 5-year-old Martin was right behind her. And he had even pestered his parents to allow him to attend Young Elementary School with Christine, with a year ahead of schedule. It was a little chilly for September in Atlanta as Martin and Christine walked home, down the tree-lined street. Although Christine was 16 months old. Here's the next illustration. Yeah, I skipped a page. Older than Martin, they were about the same size. When they turned into Auburn Street, they were in step by side, but a few doors from their large Victorian house. Martin suddenly began to run. Christine took off after him, but Martin was dull in front of the door and into the house by the time she reached the porch. As soon as the door slammed behind Christine, their youngest brother, Al, came down the stairs. Martin glanced at his old grandfather clock, and he and Christine had made it home from school in 10 minutes. Who's keeping all that fuss out there? Grandmother Williams called, coming from the kitchen. Grandmother Williams was a proud, proper woman whom the children called Mama. They called their own mother, Mother Dear. Go wash your hands, said Mother Williams firmly. There are cups of hot chocolate on the table for both of you. How do you go at school today? Mama. ML told the teacher about the word you always use. Christine reported. You know, rambunctious. For goodness sake, Grandmother Williams exclaimed, drying her hands on her apron. Guess I better watch what I say around here. After drinking his hot chocolate, Martin went to get home. He took his favorite book of Bible stories from the shelf and sprawled across the bed. The illustrated book had stories about Daniel in the lion's den, Moses parting the Red Sea, and Noah building the ark. Martin liked best stories about people overcoming great odds and was never tired of looking at pictures of Samson defeating an army with only the jawbone of an ass, or David bringing down the Goliath with a rock and a slingshot. Sometimes young Martin would dream about being as strong as Samson and as courageous as David. Martin enjoyed listening to his father preach about these Bible stories, about these Bible heroes at Elmer's Baptist Church. It seemed as if his father could make the biblical stories almost come alive during his sermons. At many a time, after coming home from church, Martin would stand in front of the mirror and imitate his father, depending on what his voice to match his father's powerful way of speaking. One day I'm going to stand on the pulpit, young Martin would often tell his brother and sister, just like Daddy and Granddaddy. Young Martin, or ML, as everyone called him, was proud of his father and grandfather. And he made up his mind that he wanted to be just like them. Here's the picture, the third picture. Made up his mind that he wanted to be just like them. He had seen and been told what great preachers his father and grandfather were. He spent so many hours studying, pretending he was his father, and getting ready for the pulpit. His grandfather and Reverend Ad Williams, his mother's father, was a good storyteller. Little Martin and his brother and sister spent hours at grandfather's feet trying to keep up with his rolling voice and wonderful imagination. Grandfather Williams often told the family about his growing up and slave preacher son, and how he made her run away from his home and seek for fortune. Never told them why he had run away, and no one asked, not even the adults. Later, when Martin was older, guessed that his grandfather must have been rambunctious too, always ready to try something new. That's why he had run away. And it was hard to ask a question anyways. Once grandfather started telling his stories. He often told about his college days. His Reverend Williams was one of the 3 black men to be awarded the Morehouse College First Diplomas in 1997. The bedroom upstairs.
Not 1997.
1897. And fix the future. I'm one of the original Morehouse men, Martin's grandfather was fond of saying. Martin's mother, Alberta, sometimes tried to hush her father when he was beginning to telling the children stories about when she was a little girl. Of course, she wasn't as noisy as the 3 of you, he would say with a grin. I guess you can say she was a very quiet and serious child. Still water runs deep, as the saying goes. When Reverend Williams talked about Martin's father, about his first beginning dating with his daughter, and it was Martin's father who would always try to change the subject. I think they would really start getting serious about the time I was building a new church, Pastor Williams would recall. When your father convinced John Hope, who was the president of Morehouse, to allow him to study there. I know your father was the man who was worthy of my daughter. I'm looking. Martin sure was a hardworking man and was always had a lot of good ideas. As a preacher, he knew how to keep his listeners wide awake and interested in what he had to say. Nobody was a better organizer than Martin, sir. He was
Martin Sr.
soon the leader of one of the most prominent churches in town. Young Martin's religious faith, like much of his character, came to him from his strong, loving family. The family both protected and taught him to be a good Christian who believed that the welfare of others was more important than his personal needs.
All right, let's stop right there. What was your page? Good job. That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr. comes from a family of wise family members, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's
Part
good.
2.
Part 2 later.
Bye.
Yeah.